Hey, imagine your country suddenly becomes the richest nation on earth. Gold and silver are flowing in non-stop. Money is everywhere. Sounds like guaranteed success, right? Now imagine that same wealth slowly destroying your empire from the inside. Today, we're breaking down how Spain accidentally destroyed its own empire with too much gold. Why the richest superpower of the 16th century went bankrupt multiple times, and what that teaches us about money, power, and modern economies. So let's get into it. Imagine this: you finally start making real money, more than you ever have. Your bank account grows, your lifestyle upgrades, people respect you more, and instead of becoming stronger, more disciplined, more strategic, you get comfortable, you spend more, you rely on easy income, you stop building real skills, you assume the money will always be there, and slowly, almost invisibly, you become weaker. Look, that's not just you. That's not just modern society. That's exactly what happened to one of the most powerful empires in human history. Here's the thing: Spain didn't collapse because it was poor. Spain collapsed because it was too rich. In the 16th century, Spain was the superpower. After Columbus reached the Americas in 1492 under the Spanish crown, everything changed. By the mid-1500s, Spanish ships were hauling unimaginable amounts of gold and silver from the New World back to Europe. We're not talking small treasure chests. Between 1500 and 1650, Spain imported an estimated 180 tons of gold and over 16,000 tons of silver, mostly from mines like Potosi in modern-day Bolivia. That single mine alone produced around 60% of the world's silver at one point. Let that sink in. Spain basically controlled the global money supply. Now pause. If I told you your country controlled most of the world's precious metals, what would you expect? Prosperity, stability, dominance forever, right? That's the common assumption. More money equals more power. But money isn't wealth. Production is wealth. Skills are wealth. Systems are wealth. And Spain forgot that. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. When silver started flooding into Spain, prices didn't stay the same. They exploded. Historians call it the price revolution. Between 1500 and 1650, prices in Spain increased roughly sixfold. Imagine your groceries costing 6 times more within a few generations. Wages didn't keep up. The silver made everything more expensive because there was more money chasing the same amount of goods. It was inflation on a massive scale. The more treasure arrived, the less each piece was worth. It's basic supply and demand, but magnified across an empire. And here's the psychological trap. Easy money changes behavior. Spain didn't use its wealth to industrialize early. It didn't build a strong manufacturing base. Instead, it relied on imported goods from places like the Netherlands and England. Spanish elites preferred prestige over productivity. Why build factories when you can just buy finished products with American silver? Why innovate when treasure fleets arrive every year? This is what economists today call the resource curse. Countries rich in natural resources often grow slower in the long term because they rely too heavily on extraction instead of diversification. Spain became addicted to silver the way some modern economies are addicted to oil or debt-fueled growth. The empire stopped training its economic muscles. Meanwhile, Spain was fighting expensive wars across Europe: the Dutch Revolt, conflicts with France, endless rivalry with England. Maintaining a global empire from the Philippines to the Americas required massive military spending. At one point in the late 1500s, as much as 80% of Spain's state revenue went to military expenses. 80%. That's like earning $100,000 a year and spending $80,000 just servicing conflicts and obligations. And despite all that silver, Spain declared bankruptcy multiple times: 1557, 1575, 1596. Again, in the 17th century. Think about that. The richest empire in Europe, bankrupt. How? Because income isn't the same as financial stability. Spain borrowed heavily against future silver shipments. It assumed the treasure would never stop. It built its budget on optimism. Sound familiar? Governments today borrow against future growth. Companies borrow against future revenue. Individuals swipe credit cards assuming next month will cover it. Spain did the same, just on an imperial scale. Now let's zoom out. There's another layer people ignore. When Spain expelled Jews in 1492 and later expelled Moriscos in the early 1600s, it removed large segments of skilled merchants, artisans, and entrepreneurs from its population. These weren't just religious decisions, they were economic decisions with consequences. You can't weaken your productive class and expect long-term growth. Wealth doesn't sustain itself, people do. At the same time, Northern Europe was changing. The Dutch Republic embraced trade networks and financial innovation. England invested in naval power and later industrialization. They didn't have endless silver mines. They had systems, banks, joint stock companies, stock exchanges. Spain had treasure fleets. One builds compounding growth, the other builds dependence. Let me simplify this with a metaphor. Spain won the lottery every year for decades, but instead of investing the winnings into businesses, education, infrastructure, and innovation, it used the money to pay off debts, fund wars, and buy luxury goods. When the lottery slowed down, there was nothing underneath, and the lottery did slow down. Silver production fluctuated, piracy increased, military defeats weakened control. The famous Spanish Armada was defeated in 1588. That wasn't the end, but it was symbolic. The aura of invincibility cracked. Here's the surprising reveal. Spain didn't collapse overnight. It declined slowly. Power shifted north. Financial leadership moved to Amsterdam, then London. Spain still had colonies, still had influence, but the center of gravity changed. The empire hollowed out from within. Now let's connect this to you, because history is useless if it doesn't teach you something actionable. The core lesson is simple. Unearned or easy income can make you fragile if it replaces skill building and system building. If you rely on one stream of income, one lucky break, one booming market, you're Spain in the 1500s. It feels powerful. Until it isn't. Diversification matters. Not just in investments, but in capabilities. Build skills that produce value, not just assets that generate cash. Invest windfalls instead of inflating your lifestyle. When income rises, don't let expenses rise proportionally. Spain's mistake wasn't having gold, it was structuring its entire economy around gold. There's also a warning about ego. Spain believed its dominance was divinely guaranteed. It saw itself as chosen, untouchable. That mindset reduces urgency. When you assume you'll always win, you stop adapting. Meanwhile, smaller, hungrier competitors innovate faster. The Dutch didn't have an empire the size of Spain's, but they had efficiency. England didn't have pottery, but it built institutions, and institutions outlived treasure. If you look at modern economic data, resource-dependent economies still face similar challenges. Studies from the World Bank and economists like Jeffrey Sachs have shown that countries heavily dependent on natural resource exports often experience slower long-term growth compared to diversified economies. The pattern repeats. Oil, diamonds, gas. The mechanism is the same. Easy revenue crowds out deeper development. So ask yourself, where in your life are you relying on silver shipments? A high-paying job you assume will last forever? A booming industry? A trend? What happens if it slows? Do you have systems underneath? Do you have adaptable skills? Or are you just waiting for the next treasure fleet? Spain accidentally destroyed its own empire, not because it lacked strength, but because it mistook cash flow for capability. It confused temporary advantage with permanent superiority. It prioritized control and consumption over innovation and resilience. And here's the final uncomfortable truth. Decline doesn't announce itself loudly. It feels normal, it feels gradual, it feels manageable. Spain didn't wake up one morning and say, "We're finished." It just kept making small decisions that favored the present over the future. That's the real danger, so learn from it. When you experience growth, use it to build foundations, not illusions. When you win, reinvest. When you feel powerful, double down on humility and improvement. Wealth is a tool. Power is temporary. Systems endure. Spain had mountains of gold and oceans of silver. What it lacked was disciplined reinvestment and structural evolution. Don't make the same mistake in your own empire, however small it is right now, because history doesn't just repeat, it rhymes. And if you're paying attention, it can make you stronger instead of softer. And here's the real lesson. Spain didn't collapse because it was weak. It collapsed because it became dependent on easy wealth. Money without systems creates fragility. History has already proven that. If this video changed the way you see power and wealth, leave a like. Comment below. Do you see similar patterns in the world today? And subscribe if you want more deep dives into the systems that shape our world. See you in the next one.